I've read at least one study that indicates autistics and ADHDers prefer a direct communication style, meaning one where your meaning is explicit, there's no subtext, and there's no hidden meaning to what you're doing or saying at any given time. And this can be the case that there is a subtext, that there is a hidden meaning during communications with neurotypicals. There can be sarcasm, nuances that you miss in body language, in tone, in expression, posture, in what they say and what they don't say, and a lot of us get tired trying to read between the lines. Now, if you put all of us on an island, you could maybe create a utopian society of fellow neurodivergents who understand each other a little bit better, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee a straight shot, perfect communication experience. And this is for several reasons. First of all, we can be hard to read. I know myself, after a long working week, I don't do any masking. I have a flat affect, flat expression. My tone can be flat. I don't have a lot of body language. I don't have a lot of intonation. It's very hard to read me, and I've had multiple people tell me that. And people socially will say, you seem kind of grumpy, you seem kind of annoyed, you seem kind of aloof. And then my humor is also very dry. My delivery is terrible. I can verge on dark gallows humor. I say things mostly tongue-in-cheek, but then I don't deliver it in a way that people can actually read it as tongue-in-cheek. So they assume a lot of the time I'm being serious, and people see me as deadly serious all the time. And because I'm always with this kind of flat or grim expression. And I've had multiple people tell me that before they got to know me, they seemed like I was angry and unfriendly and hostile, and I thought I was better than everybody. And I was like, oh no, that's just my resting brat face. And they make assumptions about me until they get to know me, and then they're like, oh, that's not actually who he is. One of my good friends, who's also neurodivergent, said, you're kind of hard to read. You seem kind of like mad a lot of the time. I'm like, yeah, I do actually. And I don't feel like I'm being criticized for that, because I do know that's how I come across with this flat expression, flat vocal intonation, monotone. It's very easy to read that way. And even as neurodivergents, we still try to read people socially. That's just a normal practice. We just probably struggle a lot more, at least to read neurotypical body language or communication styles. So we're still going to try to read each other, and that can be a lot harder if you experience the challenges that I do in social situations. There's two other reasons. The first is that in reading people, we are often more likely to try to read them as we would read a neurotypical, because we live in neurotypical societies where they're the majority and we have to subscribe to their rules. Walking outside, going to school, going to work, we're living by their rules, and we're trying to learn the language that they speak to communicate socially in ways that they deem normal. And so a lot of us have trained ourselves to look for the signs that would indicate happiness, annoyance, frustration, engagement, enjoyment. All these things we are trying to read according to neurotypical norms. And it's a skill that we learn to pick up as a matter of survival. And it's hard not to go into any situation, even knowing we're surrounded by neurodivergents, to not engage in that attempt to read people according to neurotypical conventions, which can set us up for trouble, because when you're with a neurodivergent, we don't follow those conventions. We behave in unconventional ways. So the primary language we learn for navigating social situations suddenly doesn't work, or it can be incomplete. And so it's like having to relearn reading people, because a lot of us don't have broad exposure to fellow neurodivergents. We're not surrounded by fellow neurodivergents a lot of the time. So we don't necessarily cultivate the skill in reading people, or we might have difficulties around using assertive communication to clarify and talk to people and ask what they're feeling, because when you ask people explicitly, neurotypicals can get annoyed. They can get frustrated. Like, yes, is it not obvious? Is it not already explicit? Why are you asking me this? Can you not see from my angry tone, my angry voice? And you're like, I don't want to ask these questions because I might get attacked. I might get in trouble. So that's the second reason. The third reason is, living in neurotypical societies, we learn to mask, camouflage, and compensate for our neurodivergent traits, and this becomes second nature. So when we go into social interactions, even with fellow neurodivergents, we're doing this performance, this perfectly calibrated performance to hide our differences, because we know that they can cause trouble. They can draw attention and lead to judgment, exclusion, punishment, marginalization, bullying. And so we've learned to perform in a way, even when we know we're in the company of neurodivergents, to create social comfort, or to be read in a way that is easily perceivable, easily parsable by anybody. And it's not necessarily authentic. It is this version of ourselves that we've curated, the people-pleasing, full and response-driven version of ourselves that is geared towards appeasing people and their expectations of us in social situations. So we're going to assume here that many of us actually do this, even when we're surrounded by neurodivergents. We're performing, and then we drop the performance, and then we're not any more legible when we're not performing, because many neurodivergents haven't learned how to actually read each other, or to ask clarifying questions and to do the investigatory work to clarify things with fellow neurodivergents. We don't have the practice. So it's not a straight shot. It's not necessarily easy street when you're surrounded by neurodivergents, because we have new social challenges to contend with. I would love to believe that we all get each other inherently, and I do believe there is some element of that. That's why a lot of the people I surround myself with are neurodivergent in some way. We appreciate that direct communication style. We get each other's sense of humor. We find it highly appealing that we're direct with our communication and that we don't have to kind of read between the lines or worry about something that isn't being conveyed to us. But there still can be a lot of confusion. There can still be a lot of anxiety and disease or unease, because we're still trying to read for those things. We're still trying to anticipate those things. We're still struggling to understand each other in some instances. And I think that divide can be bridged with a lot of direct communication. Crucial conversations are essential here. Talking about what you're feeling and what you're needing and what you're reading, and then asking clarifying questions, not being accusatory about it, not doing projections or assuming things about other people's intentions based on the language you've learned when you interact with neurotypicals, and trying to apply it to these situations, realizing you have to build a new vocabulary for reading and expressing yourself, even when in the company of fellow neurodivergents, to help bridge that communication divide, because it does exist, regardless of your neurotype. It's always going to be a struggle to understand fellow human beings. It's not always necessarily like something just fits in and clicks. We're always going to have to try to make ongoing efforts to bridge communication divides and better understand each other and develop empathy and hopefully compassion for each other. Have you struggled with communication where it comes to fellow neurodivergents, where you've misunderstood somebody or been misread by somebody? And what have been your experiences? Have you struggled? Have you succeeded? Has it been a mixed bag experience for you, or has it just been infinitely easier than interacting with neurotypicals? I would love to hear all about your experiences.